Welcome back. Today I have a new project. It is text editor with vanilla JavaScript. Let me show you what we are building in this course. This is our final project. Let me add some text, then we will test all these functionalities. So I just added the text. Now if I select the first line, I can make it any of these options. If I hit the H1, H2, it will make it the heading with just one click. If I select this one, I can make it underline. I can make this one the bold, and I can just one click make it strike through. Now all these options, I can just select them with one click. I can make it unordered list or ordered list. And this one, if I select this and click on the block quote, it will make it a block quote. So these are the options that we have in this editor. Now not only that, we have the keyboard shortcuts as well. So if I select this text and press the Ctrl+B, it will make it bold. If I select this one, press Ctrl+I, it will make it italic. Now this is not complete. We have the enter or the shift enter handling as well. So what is that? So if I move my cursor back to this text and hit the enter, you see the next line start with the next list item. But if I hit enter again, it will go as a normal text. Now if I move my cursor back to this JavaScript, if I hit enter, the next line has the same formatting, but if I hit enter, it is gone. There's one more thing. If I type here title, select it and make it the H2 heading, and if I just hit the enter, you see the next line is normal text. But if I move my cursor back and I press shift enter, the next line has the same formatting. So this is how we are handling the keyboard events for the next line, going to the next line for the using the enter keyword. So this is what we are building in this course. Now for the source code, you can download the source code. When you download the source code, this is what you will find. Inside the source code, you will have all these folders episode wise, and you will find these two files, the architecture diagram and the cheat sheet as well. And we will write the code with each episode as we progress. So you can find all the files in here, and the episode 12 will have the complete code. In next episode, we will not write the code. First, we will understand the requirement of the project. We will take this project as a client project. We will understand the requirement. We will list out the feature, and we will list out what is the out of scope for this project. Then we will think about the architecture of the project. And once we have all those details, then we will start writing the code. I'll see you in next episode. In last episode, you saw the demo of the project. Now let's discuss the details, the requirement of the project. So let's say we have a client, and client has two requirements. First, the client wants an editor which will be used by his content creator to write the blog post without writing the HTML. So we need to give options like the styling, heading, list and links. So his content creator can write the post without the HTML. And second requirement is for the developer. So developer can read the HTML, whatever inside this text editor. Developer can read it, save in the database, or developer can read from the database and update this HTML with some public methods. So that is also we need. And we need some event listener. So if we are typing inside here, we need some events. So developer can add some more functions to those particular events. So these two are the requirements of our client. Now based on these two requirements, I have listed the features for it. So we need the formatting. The inline formatting is here. The 4 options we need. For the structure, we need all these options. For the link, we need to add the link, edit link, remove link, all these options we need. And for the keyboard shortcuts, we will handle all the keyboard shortcuts. And for the public API, for the developer, we need to expose some methods, and same for the events. So this is what we are going to cover in this course. Now, when we are developing the editor, we will face some edge cases. So I have just listed all the edge cases. As we create our editor, we will handle all the edge cases as well. Now there is one more important thing. We have listed all the features, and I have listed all the out of scope. So out of the scope, we are not doing the image upload, table, collaborative editing, custom undo redo, or any paste from the Word. Now, why this is important? Because we need a clear picture of the requirements, what is included and what is not included in the project. So whenever you take a project from the client or you are working on a project, always make sure what is in the scope and what is out of the scope. This way you have the clear picture what you are working. So now in the summary, we have all these features that we are going to build, and this is what is the out of the scope. In next episode, we will think about the architecture of our project. I'll see you in next episode. In last episode, we saw the requirement, we saw what is out of scope, what is in the scope. In this, we think like a engineer, the architecture of the project. So based on the requirements, I have created these modules. Now each module handles just one thing. And this is our main file which connects all these modules and completes our editor. And this file, inside this we will have a facade pattern. Facade pattern means we are not exposing all these modules to the public. We just expose some very minimal functions to the user, so user can use our editor. With this, we have all these modules: the event emitter, selection, formatter, link dialog, block handler, shortcuts, and the toolbar. All these are modules. Now, how these modules are connected? This is how they are connected. We have the single file which will expose to the user. User will use only one file, not all the files, just one file. And internally, this file use all these modules. And these modules, they will be used by any of these modules whenever is needed. So this is how our modules are connected. Now, what we are going to have some features, like based on the features, this is our public API. We will have the content API, the formatting, the life cycle, and the events API for the developer. And this is our folder structure. This is very important because this is what makes our project manageable. So we have one single HTML file, the CSS file, and JS file for each module. So now we understand what modules we need, what is our architecture of the project. Now we need a order, in which order we are going to create all these modules. So for the order, this is our order for each module. We start with our very basic editor file, then move to the event emitter, then the selection, then selection range, formatter, toolbar, shortcuts, block handler, and finally at the link dialog, and we'll just polish it and make it ready for the use. So this is what our project architecture is. In next episode, we will start writing code. I see you there. All right. Now the time to write some code. Open the source folder. You will find all these folders. We'll start with the episode 3. Episode 3 has 2 folders, complete and the start. Open the start. Inside it we have JS and the HTML file. Open the JS file. This is where we will write the code. Now before we write the code, let's see what we are doing in this episode. In this episode, we'll only render a editor with a placeholder. That is it. This is what we are doing in this episode. So let's open the JS file in the start folder and start writing the code. So whenever we have the class, first thing we do, the constructor. Constructor, here it will take 2 parameters. One is the selector, second is the options. And we'll need some variables. So we'll define it here. Container and options. So the selector, if you open the HTML file, you will see I have imported this file here and created an instance of our editor file. And I have passed 2 parameters. First is the selector and second is a options object. Now this selector, it is an ID which you can find it here, the ID with the editor, this div. This is where we will render our editor. So I have passed the ID and second is the options. Now back to the JS file, we have selector. So when we have the selector, we need to get it from the DOM. We'll say this dot container equals to document dot query selector. We will query the DOM and we will get our selector using the ID, and we will add a check here if we don't find it. If we don't find the container, we will throw a new error. We'll say element not found, and we'll add the selector bat so the user knows what is wrong with the selector. if it is correct or not. And if we find it, we'll store the options. So we'll say this dot options equals to, we'll have the placeholder default value, start writing. This is our default placeholder, and if we get some options from the user, we can just override with the spread operator. Okay, so this is our basic setup of the constructor. It does not do anything in our editor. If we open this file in our browser, you see there is nothing yet because we haven't rendered anything in our browser. So now let's just write a function which will render the HTML into the page. So let's create a method, render method. And if you see, I am adding the hash before the method or these variables. This hash makes these variables and the method private to this class. So outside the class, we cannot access these methods and the variables, which is good for our security of the class. So now let's add the render method. Inside it, we will create the HTML using the JS. So we'll say this dot wrapper. Now we need few more variables to create the HTML. So I will add it here. Wrapper. We'll need content. Okay, now let's just create the element, document.create element, div, this dot wrapper, class name, we add the class name in here, and then we'll say this dot content equals to document dot create element, this dot content dot class name, this is our class name, and this property, this next property, it is very important because this makes our content, the editor, editable, so we can write the text inside our editor. I'll set it to true. You will see it in action when we render the editor on the page. This dot content dot dataset dot placeholder equals to this dot options dot placeholder, and now we have these two, wrapper and the content. Let's just render it. So we'll say this dot wrapper will have the content. So this dot content and this dot container or container will have the wrapper, this dot wrapper. Now if I save it, nothing will happen because we did not call our render method inside constructor. So let's call it here, this dot render. Now if I save it, you see we have the editor in the page rendering. So let's just inspect it, why it is rendering and how it is rendering. So we created this div with the class, which is our wrapper, which is here. Then we created the content with this class and property editable and the placeholder as a data set. So this is content editable, data set placeholder as a placeholder text. And these two are inside the editor. So we just took the content, appended into the wrapper, then wrapper appended to the container. Container is what we have given as a ID as a selector. So this is how our editor is rendering. Now for the placeholder, we added this placeholder attribute. Now if you look at the CSS, there is a before. If I click here, you see this is the CSS which is rendering our content, this attribute in our page. Now if I start typing, you see it is directly typing inside the div. We will fix it later because we need a specific tag or a proper tag for the text. We'll render the p tag Now if I remove it, you see the placeholder is not coming back. So we need to handle two things. One, if I remove the text, I should see the placeholder back. And if I type something, it should go inside some p tag, not a div tag. So let's handle these two. Back to our JS file, let's add a new method which will handle the events. We'll create bind events. First event will add this dot content dot add event listener. First is input event listener, and for this we will check if this dot content dot text content dot trim, if it equals to empty, we'll say this dot content dot inner HTML equals to a p tag. Okay, now let's save it. We'll call this method inside our constructor after the render. This dot bind events. Okay, now if I start typing, see here we will add the p tag and the text will go inside the p tag. Title. Okay, what is happening? Now if I type something and if I remove it, you see our placeholder is back. So that problem is solved. If we remove some text, the placeholder should come back. Now if we open this one, it has added the p tag as well, but this p tag only works when we remove the text. So if I just inspect it again, you see if I start typing first time, there is no p tag. If I remove it and start typing again, then we have the p tag. Now we will fix this problem with a new event handler. That handler is the focus. So this dot content dot add event listener, focus event listener, and the callback. This will check if this dot content dot inner HTML dot trim. If there is no inner HTML, then we'll say this dot content dot inner HTML equals to p tag. Okay, now on the page load, when we click inside the editor, which will trigger this focus event here. So if we just inspect this, open it, and if I just click inside it, you see the p tag is added. Now if I type something, it will go inside the p tag. If I remove it, we have back the placeholder, and we start typing again, it goes to the p tag. So this is what we are doing in our event handler. This is it for this episode. We just render the basic editor with the placeholder text and the p tag which will be there whenever we type something. So this is it in this video. I will see you in next episode. In last video, we rendered the basic editor. In this video, we will add the events. And why we need the events, I will explain in just a minute. Before that, let's just close the episode 3, open the episode 4, start file, and we have the JS from our previous episode. Now, before we write the event handler, let me explain why we need it. So if you go to the HTML file, you see we have the instance of the editor. Now let's say the developer wants to add a listener to the editor. So editor dot on change, and whenever there is change, the developer wants to, let's say, just want to log data. So right now we don't have any functionality which can handle this one. But if you are thinking that, let's say we take this class and add an event listener, and then it will work. Yeah, it will work, but there will be a problem, because let's say after a few months you want to change the class name, or you want to change the HTML structure as well. At that time, this code that you will write using the class name will fail. So we need a solid API for the developer. So whenever we change the HTML or we change the class name, it doesn't break the functionality which is implemented. So we will handle this using our custom event handler. And this custom event handling is also known as the pub sub pattern as well, the observer pattern. So let's implement this, and it will make more sense when we have the complete code working. So let's delete this line and create a new file inside the JS. We'll call it event emitter.js. Not the folder, we need the file. Event emitter.js. Okay, let's just close this one and we'll open this HTML in our browser. Okay, now go back to the file. We write our first class for the event emitter. Export default class event emitter. First thing we do, the constructor will take no parameters, and inside it we will have the events. This dot events equals to new map. Let's add this variable. This is the private variable events. Okay, now you see I'm using the map, not the object. The map and object are same. They store the data in the same format, but difference is that map has more properties and the methods which help us to set and update the values easy. So how we will store our events? So we'll have the object, we'll have the key as our event. So editor change, this is our event name, and the property, all the functions will be inside the array. So callback 1, we'll have the callback 2, and so on. So we can have n number of callbacks for a particular event. Now this is similar to the event that we implement in our browser. So if you open the editor file, we added this event listener, right? So we say the content, we add the event listener. Whenever there is an event for the input, we want this callback to fire. So this is working. Similarly, we are implementing our custom event handler in our event emitter. So this is the event name. Whenever this fires, we will call all these methods inside the array. It will make more sense when we actually implement and test it. So for this event, we need 3 methods: on, emit, and off. So let's write the on methods. It will take 2 parameters, event and callback. First we will check if there is events dot has event. If there is no event for the particular event that we just passed, if there is no event, we will initialize it with this dot events dot set. We will set a property with the name of event and we'll initialize it with the empty array. Then we'll say this dot events dot get a particular event and then push the callback inside the array. So this is our on method. Next is our emit method. It will take 2 parameters, event and data. Inside it, first we'll take all the callbacks for a particular event. So this dot events dot get the value for the particular event, and if we have the values, we'll say callbacks dot for each callback. We'll say callback with the data. We'll call that callback with the data. This is our emit method, and last is the off. Event dot callback. First we'll get all the callbacks. This dot events dot get event, and if we find all the callbacks, this dot events dot set event, and for the callbacks we'll say callbacks dot filter callback not equals to the callback that we have passed. Okay, so now we created 3 methods: the on method, emit, and the off. The on method will register the event with the callback. Emit method, it will trigger the event, it will not call the it will call the callback. It will first emit the event. For the particular event, we will have the callback from the array, and then the data will pass to that callback. And for the off, this is to unsubscribe. So if we just want to remove the particular callback for a particular event, we can use this method. Now let's go back to the editor file so we can integrate it. So back to the editor file. First, let's import this. We'll say import event emitter.js file. Now we need a variable to store all the events, the event instance. So we'll create a private variable in here, the events. Inside our constructor, before we render anything, let's add this dot events equals to new event emitter. So we create a new instance. Now inside our inside our events method, the bind events, we have these two events, focus and the input. Let's add these two here. We'll say this dot events dot emit will emit the editor dot focus, and for the input we'll call this dot events dot emit, say editor change. This is a change event, and we'll add one more in here. We'll say this dot content dot add event listener. This will be blur event, and we'll call this dot events dot emit will emit editor dot blur event. Okay, now inside this event emitter we have created these files. They are accessible because they are not private. Now in the editor file we will expose these methods for the public to use. So in here let's just add these methods. We'll add on, it will take event and the callback. I'll say this dot events dot on will pass event and the callback. Next is off event and the callback. We'll call this dot events dot off will add event and callback. Okay, now let's test this one. Now we can test the event emitter. If we go back to the HTML file, in here let's add editor dot on, and in here editor change. I want to call a method in here. We'll say just log something. So console log, say this is change event. Okay, now let's add other two as well. This is the change, and this is focus, and the last is blur. So if you open this file in the browser, let's inspect it, go to the console tab. Now if I click inside the editor, you will see the focus event fired. If I click here, you see this is a focus event. If I start typing, this is a change event. If I click outside, this is a blur event. You see, without adding like add event listener for the input or the focus or blur, we have created our own event handler which will handle all the events. Now this is the on event handler. Now we need to remove, let's say we just want to remove this focus event. So first thing, we need to store it in a variable so we can reference back to this one. So this is our focus function. We'll just move it from here, add it here, and then we'll just simply add it here. Now after the blur, okay, let's add inside the blur. So inside the blur, we'll add editor dot off. We'll call the off method. We'll say event is editor focus. I want to remove for this event, I want to remove this callback. So we'll say focus function. Let's just change the spelling. This is our function. Now let's just update it here. Now if we refresh the page, we click inside, this is your focus event. If I type something, this is your change event. If I click outside, that is your blur event. Now if I click inside again, you will see the focus event is not fired. If I click here, you see there is no focus event, but the title, the change event is there, because on the blur we remove this focus function. So we just remove this event handler method. So this is no longer listening to this particular event. So this is how our event handler will work. Now if you open the event emitter or the editor file, you see we have hard-coded these values. Now these things can lead to some bugs. If you don't type it correctly, it will be a silent bug. You won't be able to find the error, but it will not work. To fix this, let's create a new file, constant.js file, and that is where we'll store all the events. We'll say constants.js. Let's just export the object from here. Events, we'll add change event, it's editor change, focus, it's editor focus event, and the last is blur. Editor blur. Okay, now back to our editor file. Let's just import this file here. We'll say import events. Now we have 3 events. First, let's just update this one. It will be events.focus. Second is blur. And the last is change. Okay, now if we test it again, if I click inside, this is a focus event. If I type something, it's our change event. If I click outside, that is our blur event. So we have just completed our custom events methods, and you can see it is working, and we have exposed these events to the public to use, so we can easily add the listener for all these 3 events. Now our event emitter is working. This is it in this episode. I will see you in next episode. In last episode, we added the event handler. In this episode, we will understand the selection API, and we will create our selection file, which will help us to select the text, and later in the course, it will help us to make it bold or italic. So let me explain the problem first. So if I type something in here, let's say title text, and if I select it, if I click anywhere on the DOM, it will just deselect it. This is the default behavior of the browser. But if you check our complete project, let me open that from the episode 12. You see, if I start typing here, if I select it, if I click on the bold, you see the selection is there. It is not gone. But in our current implementation, if I select this, click outside, the selection is gone. So we need a functionality where we can save the selected text, and later we can use it for the formatting. For that, we'll start creating a new file, the selection, and we'll understand the selection API. Now before we write the code, close all the files. If you have all them open, go to the episode 5, start file, and open this index.html in the browser. And let's just open the console tab. Okay, now if you type in here window.getSelection, now this is our selection API. If we call this method, it will give an object with the properties and methods on it. So we will not use all these methods and the properties. We will use few of them. So when we start writing the code, you will understand what methods we need and what they will do. So you see this one of them, the is collapsed. It will be used for finding if the text is selected or not selected. And inside this one, we will have the add range method. We'll use this one. And there are a few more that we will use. the anchor node, yeah, we will use this one as well. So few of them we will use, not all of them. Let's start writing the code. So inside our episode 5 JS, let's create a new file. We'll call it. So let's create our file, the selection.js. We'll create selection.js file. Let's just define our class first. So export default class selection, and first thing we need the constructor. It will take editor element, the editor itself, and we'll store the editor in a variable. So we need a variable editor element, and we'll need one more to save the range. So saved range. First let's just store this editor element, and this dot saved range, this dot saved range equals to null. So initially we did not save anything. Now I will write some methods, then I will explain what they are. So let's just start with our first method, the get selection. It is very simple method, so it will just return the selection object from the window. So we'll say window.getSelection. This will just return the selection object. Next we need the get range. Inside it will say selection equals to this dot get range selection. Then we'll return selection dot range count is greater than 0. Then we will return selection dot get range at 0, else will return null. And next we need a method to check if we are inside the editor. So if we are typing in here and we are inside the editor or we are outside the editor, to check that we need a helper method. So it's is in editor method. Selection equals to this dot get selection, and for this one let's just return true or false. We'll say return selection dot anchor node selection. So selection dot anchor node, and this dot editor element contains selection dot anchor node. So if we have the anchor node and if it is inside the editor, it means it will return the true value. It means we are inside the editor. Next we need two more methods. So whenever we select this one, we need to save it, and when we click on a button, we will restore the selected value back. So we need two more methods. One is save, and in here so const selection equals to this dot get selection. Then we'll check if selection dot range count is greater than 0. Then we'll say this dot saved range equals to selection dot get range at 0 dot clone range. We will clone that particular range. Next is the restore method. We'll say restore, and this will first check if there is any saved range. If it is there, we'll say selection equals to this dot get selection. So first we check if there is anything selected. We need to remove it because we are restoring the selection that we already saved. So we'll say selection dot remove all ranges, and we'll say this dot add range. We'll add this dot saved range. Okay, so these are the methods for our selection. Now let's just go back to our editor file. This is where we will add all these methods so we can use them. So back to our method, our class. First let's just import it, selection, and we'll add a private variable to hold the instance of the selection. Now inside our render method, let's add the instance of the selection, new selection, and we'll pass this dot content because this is where we write the content. And now let's just add these two methods, the save and the restore, to the public API so we can use it. We'll say save selection. I will just call this dot selection dot save, and the next method is restore selection. We'll call this dot selection dot restore. Okay, now we can test it. So if we open the editor, let's type something. This is text. We'll select it. Now in the console, okay, before this we need to go HTML file, and in here we'll add editor on the window object. So window dot editor equals to editor, so we can easily access the editor in the console. So if we come in here now, let's write some text. This is text. We select it. We'll say editor dot save selection. So if I call this method, it will save the text that we have selected. And now if I click outside, it is gone, right? But we can get it back using the editor dot restore selection. And if I call this method, you see the selection is restored. So this is exactly what we will need when we will select the text and click on any of the button from the toolbar to make it bold or italic. We will need this method. So this is it in this episode. I will see you in next episode. In last episode, we build save and restore. Now we need to actually do the things when we select the text. When user clicks bold, what happens? We need to wrap the selected text in a strong tag. When user creates a link, we need to wrap text into anchor tag. So we need methods to insert content at the cursor point, and we need helper methods to check what is selected. Today we will add 4 methods: get selected text, is collapsed, insert HTML, and insert text. These are the building blocks for our formatter. So close all the files if you have them open. Open the episode 6, start file, go to the selection.js file. This is where we will write these 4 methods. So let's add it. After the range, we'll add get selected text, and it will return this dot get selection dot to string. Next is collapsed. It will return true or false if text is selected or not. So we will return this dot get selection dot is collapsed. Next we need the insert HTML and insert text. So after the restore, let's add insert HTML. I will explain once we have the complete function. So it will take the HTML. First it will restore whatever is selected. Then we'll say const range equals to this dot get range, and we'll check if there is no range. We will just return early. Now range dot delete contents, then const fragment equals to range dot create contextual fragment. We'll pass the HTML to it, and we'll say range dot insert node we'll pass it fragment and then range dot collapse false. Now let me explain each line. First, we are calling the restore method. Remember in the selection, when we select the text, we call it and it will restore the selected text. So first we call the restore. It will restore whatever is selected. Then we get the range. If there is no range, we just bail out early. And if we have the range, we call delete contents. It removes whatever is selected. If nothing is selected, it does nothing. If text is selected, it deletes it. Now this one, the create contextual fragment. This is a magic. It takes the HTML string and it turns into a document fragment, a lightweight DOM structure we can insert. So we call this method, we pass the HTML string, it converts into a document fragment, a lightweight DOM, and then we call the insert node and we put the HTML inside it. And the range or collapse, we are adding the false. So the cursor will go to the end of the text where we have added. So this is our insert HTML. You will see it in action when we will use it. Next, we need one more method, insert text. We'll say insert text. It will take the text const. So let's just write some code in here. Const escaped text. So let me just add few lines in here. These are just the regular expressions. So we just escaped ampersand, less than and the greater than sign, and we just call the insert HTML. So we'll say this dot insert HTML, we will pass the escaped. So why do we need this? For the security, if user pastes some text that contains the script tag, we don't want that. So we just escape everything in here. So now we have all these methods. Let's just expose them. So let's go back to our editor file. And in here we have the save selection and restore. We'll add a few more in here. So we'll say insert HTML. Say this dot selection dot insert HTML. I'll give it HTML. Next is insert text. We'll take the text. We'll call this dot selection dot insert text. We'll pass it text. It will take the text. Next we need two more methods to expose. So get selected text, and inside it we'll say return this dot selection dot get selected text, and last is collapsed. We'll say this dot the return this dot selection dot is collapsed. Now let's just go back to the browser. I will open this file, open the console. Now let's just test all these methods. So we'll type some text in here. This is text. I'll put my cursor after the is, and inside the console I will type editor dot insert HTML, and I will type the HTML. We'll say strong and if I hit the enter, okay, selection inner HTML is not a function. Okay, if we look at line of 137, it calls inner HTML. It should be insert HTML, not the inner HTML. If we save it, let's type again. This is text. I will move my cursor after the S. Let's just type again, hit enter. You see it has inserted the HTML where was the cursor. Right at the cursor, it just added the text. Now let's select a word. So if I select the bold, and if I just add some new, which will just insert the HTML. So if I selected this one, if I add this, it will be, so the selected text will be replaced with this one. Hit enter. You see it replaced whatever was selected. So this is one. This is exactly what our formatter will do. Now let's just select some text, and we'll call this method get selected text. So we'll say get selected text. This returns whatever is selected. Now if we call the next, which is collapsed, we call it is collapsed is not a function. Okay, let's see. If we go back to our selection, is collapsed. Let's add it here. Okay, this is text, and if we just add this method, okay, again it is not working. So inside our selection, line number 40, okay, we are calling the method. This is not a method, this is a property. We'll just save it. Again, let's type some text. This is text. We select it, and we'll call this method again. So editor dot collapsed. It is collapsed. No, it is selected. If we just remove it, then we call it again. It is true. So all our public method APIs are working. So these are the low level methods that we can use it in our text editor whenever we need it. In next episode, we'll build the formatter. This is where we will apply some of the methods to make our text bold and italic. But we'll create the methods in our formatter. I see you in next episode. Now, before we write the code for the formatter, let's see how the browser formatting works. So if I just open the console tab, and I will type text, I will select it. Inside the console, I will type document dot execute command, and I will give it command for the bold. And if I call this method, you see the selected text became the bold. So this functionality is built in the browser. This is what we are going to use to implement our formatter for the text editor. Now let's just go back to our folder. We'll go to the episode 7 start file, and inside it let's create the file formatter.js. Okay, let's create our class, export default class formatter. First thing, we need the constructor. It will take editor element and selection. Inside it, we will just store editor element. So we need these two variables, two private variables to store these two values, editor element and selection. Let's say here editor element equals to editor element, and this dot selection equals to selection. Okay. Now let's add the methods to make a text bold or italic. So let's just add it here, bold, and this one it will call, first we will restore the selected text. So we'll say this dot selection dot restore. If you remember, we have this method in our selection to restore the selected text. First we restore, and we'll say this dot editor dot focus. We will put the focus back to our editor. Then we'll say document dot execute command. We will pass bold. Okay, so this is for our bold. This should be bold. Now we need for the italic, we can just do one thing, copy and paste, change the name. It is bold, it should be italic for the italic, and we can pass the command. So for the italic, it is a italic command. Now if you see, we are repeating these lines again and again. So we can create a helper method and we will call it, we will write this code once. So we'll say execute, it will take command, value, inside it will say this dot selection dot restore, then this dot editor element dot focus, and then we'll say document dot execute command, will pass command, false, and value. Now if you see here, it says, let us update it here, value, it says this is deprecated, but this is fine because this execute command has no replacement till today, and this is supported by every other browser. So this is fine. No need to worry about this deprecation error message. Now let us update these two methods. So we'll say this dot execute command and we'll pass bold. And for the italic, we will say this dot execute command and we'll pass italic. We need two more for the underline and the strike through. So underline, it will be this dot execute, we'll say we'll pass underline, and for strike through, we'll pass this dot execute command, we'll say we'll pass strike through. So this is for our inline formatting. Now for the block level, H1, H2, the paragraph and the block quote. So let's add methods for them. So for the heading, this is heading 1, we'll call this dot. Now if we directly call the execute method, it does not support toggle for the block level heading. So for the inline heading, if we call this method, if it is not bold, it will make it bold, the text. If the text is already bold, if we call this again, it will make it, it will remove the bold. This works for the inline editing, but the toggle does not work for headings and the block level elements. For that we will need a helper method. So we'll call this helper method toggle block. I'll pass it h1. Now let's define this toggle block method. It will take tag, and we'll do it here current first. Let's get the current tag name. For that we will use document dot query command value, which is this, and we will add format block. We'll call it to lowercase. Then we'll check if current tag, whatever the current is, equals to tag, it means it's already formatted. We will convert back to the p tag. So then we'll say this dot execute command, we'll give it format block, I will pass the p tag. Else we'll call this dot execute command, format block, the tag. So if it is tag, we convert to the normal p tag. If it is a p tag, if it is not the tag, we convert to the tag. Now let's add this one for the h2 heading. So we can just copy and paste 2 times, one for the h2 heading and one for the paragraph. This is h2. Then we need paragraph. We'll say paragraph and we'll pass the p tag here. Now we don't need the toggle block for the paragraph. It just work with the execute command. So we'll say execute command. We'll pass format block, the p tag. Now for the block quote, the block quote is a special block quote, does not work simply when we want to remove the the formatting inside any list items. So we'll directly call the document and we will find it there. So let's just implement it, then we will discuss it. Block quote, and this for the block quote we will need a helper method. We'll check first. So we'll say if this dot is inside tag, block quote. If it is, then we'll say this dot execute command, we'll pass it outdent, else we'll call this dot execute command format block quote. Now let's create this inside tag helper method. Tag name selection, we'll say window dot get selection, if selection dot range count is not there, we will return false. Let node equals to selection dot get range at dot common ancestor container. We'll add the while loop. I will explain this code. Let's just finish it first. Node and node is not equals to this dot editor element. Then we'll check if node dot node name and node dot node name to lowercase equals to tag name, then we will return true. Else we'll say node equals to node dot parent node and we'll return false. Okay, now so what we do, we get the selection, there is no selection, we return early, then we get the node, and what we are doing here is we are going inside directly the DOM and we are trying to find if we are inside a specific element or not. If we are inside a specific element, then we return true, else we return false. So if we are inside some specific element, we will call this outdent method and it will remove the block quote, and if it is not the block quote, it will add the block quote for the particular selected text. Now we are done with the headings, paragraph and the block quote. Next is the list items, the bullet list and the numbered list. So we'll say bullet list, this dot execute command will pass insert unordered list. So this is a specific command we need to pass to the execute command to execute to the unordered list. And for the numbered list, it is this dot execute command and this is insert ordered list. So these two names for the first for the unordered list, second for the ordered list. This is how they are defined in the API. So when we call, it will toggle the ordered or unordered list. Now we have all these methods defined. Now we will, so what happens, like this will convert text into the bold, italic. Now we need some methods that can help us to highlight the button. So if we open our final project, you see if I type something here, and if I just make it bold, click outside, if I click here, you see we are see this button as a highlighted. Why? Because we know that this is highlighted, so we need a function which will tell us if it is a bold, italic, or underline, or strike through, or whatever is selected. So for that, let's just go back to the code and we will write some methods. These are our query methods. So we will these will return true or false based on the cursor position. So first is bold. This will return document dot query command state. Bold. So we are querying the document, check if it is selected text or the cursor inside is that particular text is bold or not. We need it for italic. Return document dot query command state, not the support, query command state, italic. Next is underline. This dot query, not the this document dot query command state, underline. Next is strike through. Return document dot query command state and it's strike through. Now we add one more helper method that will return the complete object with all the values, if it is bold, italic, h1, h2, or the numbered list or unordered list. We'll say get state. First thing we'll check the format. So block format equals to document dot query command value. We'll say format block dot, this is for the block level headings, so we'll need it. Now we will return an object for the bold. We'll say this dot is bold, italic, we can call this dot is italic. For underline, we can call this dot underline. Strike through, we'll call this dot strike through. So this is wrong here, it should be is underline, and this here italic, this is true. Okay, this is a method, we call it. These are the inline methods and the inline values. Next we need for the block level, so heading 1 we'll call block quote equals to h1. Heading 2 we'll say block quote block format, not the quote, block format equals to h2. Block quote, so this dot is inside tag block quote, and the last we have the to list item, bullet list and the numbered list. bullet list, it will be document dot query command state. We'll pass it insert unordered list, and the last is numbered list. Document dot query command state, we'll pass it insert ordered list. Okay, now we have our formatter file ready. Now we need to use it in our editor file. So let's go back to our editor file. First we import it here. Import formatter. Let us define the formatter variable first, the private method. So the private value formatter, and now we can create an instance of it inside our render method. After the selection, we can add this dot formatter equals to new formatter. We'll pass this dot content and this dot selection. Okay, now we will expose the methods from our formatter so we can use it. So in here we'll add bold. We'll call this dot formatter dot bold. Italic, for the italic we can call this dot formatter dot italic. Now we can add all the methods. So let me just add them here. They are very simple. So I will just add them here. These are for the inline, and for the headings, let's add the headings as well. We are just calling the methods that we already defined, not a complex code. It's simple. We have two more for the paragraph and for the block quote and for the bullet list. We need it for bullet list. Now we need one more get state, so we can get state if it is selected or not. Now let's just save it and test in the browser. So if I open this in the browser, so let's just open it here. Okay, now let's just type some text before inspect the console, and let's just add some text in here. So we see text, we'll select it. Inside the editor, we'll call editor dot bold. Call it, see, it has made it bold. So we have these methods in place, and these methods can be used for our editor when we have the toolbar on the top. So in this video, we just created the formatter methods. So all the helper methods are ready. And now we are ready for making our editor really a complete editor with the working toolbar. So in next episode, we will create our toolbar so we can have the options to change our text. I'll see you in next episode. We have all the pieces. We have event emitter for events. We have selection to save and restore the selection. And we have the formatter to make the text bold, italic. Now we need toolbar. By end of this video, this is what we will create, the toolbar in our editor. So let's open the episode 8 start file, and we will create our toolbar. So let's create the file. Inside the JS folder, I will create toolbar JS. Export default class toolbar. First thing, we have our constructor. It will take the editor, and we need a private variable. So let's create them. editor, we'll need toolbar, and we'll need buttons. First, this dot editor equals to editor, and we need this dot buttons equals to new map. Again, the map has more property than the object, so we are using the map here. Now let's create our list of buttons that we will need. So we'll create an array of object that will contain all the detail of each button. So we'll have get button config, and it will return array of object, and each object will have a name, the bold, label, B, and title, bold. So this will be our array of object for each button. So if we check the editor, by end of this video we will have this one. So bold is the name, and the label is the B, and the title. So if we hover over it, you will see the bold there. So that is our title, and these two things will be used for action and for the creating the button. Now I will just copy and paste this list because it's just array of items. So I'll just put it here. We have name, label, and title for each button. We have the separator. You see these separators. So we'll need a separator as well. It does not require any label or the title. So this is our button list. Now let's create a render method that will render all these buttons. We'll create render method. It will take the container where it will render all these buttons. Container. Now let's create the toolbar. So this dot toolbar equals to document dot create element div, and we'll add a class name to it. Toolbar dot class name equals to black and white. What you see is what you get. Toolbar. Now let's call this method, this dot get button config. It will return array of object, and for each config we'll create a button. For the button we will have a separate method. For now we will just add it here. Later we will create this button method. I will pass the config. This dot buttons dot set config dot name and the button. And this dot toolbar dot append child when we will append the button. Now this is for each button, but for the separator we need to handle it separately. So we'll check if config dot name equals to separator. So if it is separator, we don't want to create any button for the separator. We will create a separator. So we'll create a span document dot create element. We'll create a span for the separator. Separator dot class name equals to black and white. What you see is what you get. Toolbar separator, separator. So this is our class name. Then this dot toolbar dot append child, and we will append separator. We will return from here because we don't want to execute next line, because there will be no button, because it's just this one separator. And then we will create the button, we will append to the toolbar. Next we need in here, so this will generate all the buttons, add into the toolbar. Now container dot insert before this dot toolbar and container dot first child, and then we will create one more method which will bind the events. We'll create this method later, events. Now let's create this method, create button. This is our render. Now we create this method, create button. It will take the config as a parameter, and inside it let's create the button. Document dot create element, we create a button, button dot type, it's a button, button dot class name, it will be black and white, what you see is what you get, toolbar button, button dot text content equals to config dot label, and button dot title equals to config dot title, and button dot dataset dot action equals to config dot name. Now we just created the button. Let's add some event listener, because when we click on the button we need some event listener. Let's create it here. The reference was the wrong name, so let's just add the event now. So button dot add event listener, mouse down, and the callback will call prevent default, and we'll call this dot editor dot save selection. Now when we click on the button, on the mouse down, as soon as we click the mouse and we don't release the button, we will prevent default, because otherwise it will lose the focus, and then we will save the selection whatever is selected. So this is our mouse down button, and next is a click. So click happens when we release the button from the mouse. So add event listener, click, and for the click we'll call this dot execute action. So when we click we need to execute some action, so we'll create a method for this one, but right now we can just add a reference to it. It will be our execute action, and we'll pass config.name, and then we'll return the button. Now let's add this execute action method. So we'll say, let's just copy the name so we don't add any typo. Execute action, it will take the action, then we'll check if type of this dot editor of action equals to function, then we'll say this dot editor of action, then we'll call one more method, this dot update active state. Okay, this execute button, what it does, we give it a name. The name is this one, bold, italic, underline, strike through. So it will take that name, and if it is so it will take the name, it will pass name to here. Now it says this dot editor action. So this dot editor dot action. So if we scroll up, editor comes from the other place, which will come from the editor file, and in here if you see we have this bold, italic, underline, strike through, right? All these are methods. So when we call this like this, editor dot action, which is the bold or the italic, it will call these methods. So we are referring to these methods as an action, and then we are calling the update active state. So whenever we click on the any button, once it is selected, it will become the active based on the action. So if we click one time, it is active, second time it is non-active. So we'll create this method now. So let's create this one, update active state. If this dot editor, if we are not inside our editor, then we will add or remove the class. So we'll say this dot editor dot is in editor. We'll call this dot buttons dot for each button dot class list dot remove. We'll remove is active and we will return from here. You see, we are accessing the methods from the editor, which is not inside in this file, because what we did, we passed the editor, which will come from the editor file, and all these methods which are publicly accessible, we are using them in other files. So they are connected. Next, we'll get the state of the buttons. We'll say this state, this dot editor dot get state. Now we are calling the get state to get the state of the buttons. So if it is active or not active, so we'll get all the state. I'll check this dot buttons dot for each button. We get the name, and we'll check if state dot has own property, the name. Then we'll add button dot class list dot toggle is active, and state name. Okay, all these methods will make more sense when we actually use these methods in our editor. Now we need one more method, which is the bind events. So let's create this one, bind events, and in here we'll say document dot add event listener, and this event listener is selection change. So whenever we select the text, it will call this method, which is update active state. So as we select, it will check if it is already selected or not. Based on that, it will update the state. So update active state. Okay, now let's just integrate in our editor file. In here, if you check, we are accessing the editor dot is in editor, and if we open our editor, we don't have this method available. So let's add it here. So in here we'll add is in editor, and this method is available on selection class. So this dot selection dot is in editor. Okay, now let's create the instance of our toolbar. So we'll import it first, import toolbar. Let's create a variable for the toolbar. And now inside our render method, after the formatter, we can add this dot toolbar equals to new toolbar, and we will give it the this, which is our current class, the editor class. Then this dot toolbar dot render method, we will call the render method, and it will take the wrapper as a container. Okay, now if we save this and if we open this in our browser, you see we are rendering the UI here, but some CSS is missing. Okay, so this class, this it should be single hyphen. So let's go back to our toolbar where we added the this one, we can remove the one. Let's save it. Okay, now it's working. So we have our toolbar rendering in the editor. And let's try this. So if I type something, select it, click here. So if we try this, it's not working. Okay, so when we click on it, we are executing the action. Let's see our execute action method. In here, we check if it is function. Okay, we are just referring to the function. We are not calling it. Let's just call the method in here. Let's type it again. Title, select, click bold. See, it is bold. If we click italic, underline, strike through, H1, H2. So it's working. See, everything is working fine. So now we have our toolbar. Toolbar is working. Every single thing is in place and all the functionality is working. Right now we are doing it with the button click, but in next episode we will add the keyboard shortcuts so we can make it bold or italic using the keyboard shortcuts. I see you in next episode. Okay, in last video we created the toolbar and toolbar is working. Now let's work on the keyboard shortcuts. So I'll close all these files, open the episode 9, start file and editor file. Now we will not create a separate file, we can just add all the keyboard shortcuts in here. So we'll add shortcuts equals to new map, and it will be array of the array. So I'll type it here, Ctrl+B, and it will become bold. So this is how we will have all our shortcuts. So let me just add all the shortcuts in here. So we don't have to type it, it's just the text. So in here you see if we press the Ctrl+B, it will become bold, Ctrl+I, italic, underline, strike through, heading, bullet list, number list and block quote. Now we need a method that will handle the keyboard events. So let's just create a new method. We scroll down, we have the render method, bind events. After the bind events, let's add a new method. We'll call it handle key down. It will take the event. And now let's add the code for handling all the keyboard shortcuts. Parts equal to empty array, and we'll check if e dot control key or e dot meta key, and we say parts dot push control. Now this meta is for MacBook. Like if you are using the Mac, the control key does not work there, so you will so this meta key will work. So it is equals to the command key, the meta key and the control key. So either of these two key it will work. It will get converted into the control. And for the shift, so e dot shift key or e dot shift key, we don't need the meta for the shift key. Then we'll say parts dot push shift. Then we'll say parts dot push e dot key dot to lowercase. Then let's create the combo. Parts dot join, and will join with the plus sign. So it will become our combo as we have similar to what we have added here. So let's go back to our method, handle key down, and here we'll take the action first. So action equals to this dot shortcuts dot get. For the combo, we'll check if we have the action and type of this of action. So based on the action name, we are accessing our publicly available methods. We'll check the function. If it is a function, then we'll add e dot prevent default, and then we'll call the method action and we'll call the method. Okay, now we have this handle key down. Now let's add this in our bind events. This is our bind events. After the input, before the end of the function, we'll add it here. This dot content dot add event listener will add key down, and the callback we will call this dot handle key down, and it will take the event. We need to take it from here and pass it to the method. Now let's test this. I will open this HTML file in our browser. Let's just open it. Now I will type something, title text. I'll select the text, Ctrl+B, and see it is bold. If I move cursor back, it is highlighted again. If I select this one, I can make it, let's say, italic. Yeah, it's italic. So our keyboard shortcuts is also working. So now we have a really good editor working with the key shortcuts or with the toolbar mouse click. In next episode, we will handle something trickier. So let's say if I press enter key in here, the next line will start with the same formatting or the new formatting. All those things we will handle in our next episode. Okay, now we will handle the enter key when let's say we are typing in here, we press the enter, how it will be handled. So we need consistency across all the browser, so we will handle the enter key. So for that, let's open the episode 10 start file and open the editor.js file, and I'll open the HTML as well in the browser. Okay, now let's create our method. We have this handle key down. After that, we'll add a new method. Okay, so first thing we will need to find out where we are right now. So let's say if I add title in here, I make it h1. First I need to check what it is, like it's a h1 or h2 or b, and then according to this we will handle the enter key. So let's add a method here, get current block, selection window dot get selection, and if we don't have any selection range count, then we will simply return null. Else we'll say node equals to selection dot get range at, say, start container, then while loop, while node and node not equals to this dot content. I'll check if node and if node dot node type equals to node dot element node. I'll check this dot display equals to window dot get computed style for that node and get the display property. Then we'll check if display equals to block or display equals to list item. Then we'll return the node. Else we'll check node equals to node dot parent node, then we'll return null. Now what it does, it will go to the selection and it will keep checking until it finds some block elements. So it could be h1, h2, p tag, block code, whatever it is. It will just find it, this loop, to find where we are right now in the text editor. Now let's handle the enter key. So when we press the enter key, we need to handle it. So let's create our handle enter key. So after this method, let's add it here. Handle enter, it will take the event. Let's write the code now. So const block equals to this dot get current block, and if we don't find the block, we will return false. Then first we get the tag name. So block dot tag name dot to lowercase, we get the selection. So window dot get selection, and we get the range. Selection dot get range at 0. Now check if the cursor is at the end of the block. So for that we'll check at end equals to range dot collapsed and range dot end offset equals to range dot end container dot text content or empty string dot length. So it will check if we are at the end of the selected text. Then we need to check headings. So we'll check tag name equals to h1 or tag name equals to h2, and we'll check at end. Then we'll add prevent default const p. Let's create a paragraph because we are going to the new line. New line should start with some paragraph, not directly text. So we'll create a element p tag. I will say p dot inner html equals to a new line. We'll say block dot after p tag. Okay, now let's move cursor to the new paragraph. So const new range equals to document dot create range, new range dot set start p dot comma 0, next new range dot collapse true, and selection dot remove all ranges. First we remove all the selection, then we'll say selection dot add range. We'll add this new range that we just created and we'll add the range. Return true. Next, let's check the list item. If tag name equals to list item and block dot text content dot trim equals to empty, then we'll check e dot prevent default, and we will call few methods. Document dot execute command, and we'll give it insert paragraph. So these are the valid names, this insert paragraph. So it will insert the paragraph, and Then we'll call document dot execute command and we'll add outdent. It will go to the next line, and it will remove the current formatting. Then we'll return true. Next, let's handle the block quote. So for the block quote, we'll check if tag name equals to block quote and block.textcontent.trim equals to empty. Then we'll add e.prevent_default. We'll create a new paragraph. Const p equals to document dot create element p tag. We'll add p dot inner HTML equals to brick, and then block dot after we'll add p tag and block dot remove. Next, let's move the cursor to the new paragraph. So const new range equals to document dot create range. The new range dot set start p comma 0. The new range dot collapse true. Selection dot remove all ranges. First we remove all the selection, then selection dot add range, new range. We just created this new range. Then return true. Okay. If all these are false, let the browser handle however it wants to handle. So finally return false. Now the browser will handle if none of these conditions matches, then browser will handle it. Okay, now this handle enter, we will add it inside our handle key down. So if we check the handle key down, it's here. Before we are checking the key name, we'll add it here. We'll check if event dot key equals to enter and it's not a shift key, e dot shift key. Then we'll say if this dot handle enter, we pass the event, then we'll return from here. Okay, so this is how we are handling our key down. Now let's test this one. We'll open the browser. Let's type something. This is new text. So let's select it. Press the H1. I click enter. It goes to the new line. Text, it's working fine. If I go back to that line and if I hit shift enter, new line with the same formatting, if I hit again, it is gone. So this is being handled. Now let's go to the list item. For that, let's add some item. So item 1, item 2, item 3. We select these 3 items. Let's select unordered. If I hit enter, it goes to the new line. Then normally this is all what you see in the most of the text editor. Now if we just hit the enter, it goes to the new line with the paragraph. So now we added this handling because all the browsers does not handle all these enter key similarly. So for the same approach or the same consistency, we added the handle key. So we are handling the enter key now. Now in the next episode, we need one final piece, which is the link dialog, the link. So right now we don't have any option to add the link. In next episode, we will add the link and complete the our toolbar. In this episode, we will add option to add link. So let's open our code. I will close the file, episode 11, start file. I will open the formatter first, because if you see in here, we have methods to handle the h1 heading, h2 heading, and all these inline formatting. Now we need some methods to handle the link or unlink, like adding the link or removing the link. So for that, let's add it here. First is link. It will take the URL, and if there is no URL, then we will just return. And if it is a URL, then we'll say execute command, create link, and we'll pass the URL. And to remove, we'll create unlink method, and it will call this dot execute command, and it will pass this value unlink. So these two methods, we'll use them. Now let's create the file to handle the link. So I will call it link dialog.js. Okay, let's create the file first. We create the file. Let's create our class, export default class. The name is link dialog. Okay, let's create our constructor. It will take the editor. And we need some variables. So let's define variables. We need editor. We need dialog. The dialog to handle the link, where we will add the link dialog, and we need the input, and we need a flag is open or not. So by default value is false. Okay, now inside the constructor, this dot editor equals to editor, and we will create two methods, one which will render the link, and second which will bind the events to handle all the events. So we'll have two methods, this dot render, and second will be this dot bind events. So let's create our first method, render. So render, let's create the dialog first. Okay, I will just add some couple of lines, then I will explain what I'm doing. So this dot dialog equals to document dot create element div. We'll say this dot dialog dot class name equals to black and white. What you see is what you get. Dialog. Next is this dot dialog dot inner HTML. I'll just copy and paste the HTML because it's just a pure HTML, not any functionality. So this is what we have. So we have the overlay, we have the content div. Inside it we have the title, the insert link, then we have the placeholder for the input field, and we have two buttons, submit button and cancel button. Very simple dialog. Now let's add this dot. So this dot input equals to this dot dialog dot query selector. So now we created the HTML for the dialog. Now we can query this dialog and get the input to handle the input when we add any link. So we'll say query selector. We'll add this class, which is this one. So let's just put it here. We'll query our dialog, we'll get the input. So now we have reference to our input. Now document dot body dot append child, this dot dialog. Okay, so this is our render method. Next we need the bind event methods. So let's create it here. Bind events. This it will handle all the events like the overlay click, cancel button, submit button, or enter key. So let's add it here. This dot dialog dot query selector. First we need to select the overlay. So overlay class is this. So let us copy and add it here. This is our overlay class. We'll add event listener. And we'll add click event. And on click, we'll call a method which will close the dialog. This dot close. We'll create this method. Right now it doesn't exist, so we'll create it later. So this is our overlay click. Next is the cancel button click. So this dot dialog dot query selector. Let's get the cancel button. Then we add event listener, click, and it will call the close method. This dot close. Next we need the submit button. So let's handle the submit button. This dot dialog dot query selector, and for the submit we have this class. Let's just copy this class. So this is our submit class, and we add an event listener. When we click, we'll call a submit method. This dot submit. Right now it does not exist. We'll create it later. So this is our handling the submit. Next is enter key. So if we press the enter key, we'll handle that as well. So this dot input dot add event listener, key down. So on the key down, we will handle the enter key. So we need the event in here. This is the callback. So if event dot key equals to enter, if it is enter key, then we'll call this dot submit method. And if it is a escape key, so e dot key equals to escape, then we'll call close method. This dot close. Okay, now let's create these methods. We need to create few methods in here. Now let's create some other methods. So first we will need the open method to open the dialog. So we'll create an open method. This dot editor dot save selection. So before we open the dialog, we should save whatever is selected. So we will call selection first, so we don't lose the selected text. Then we'll check if the link already is there. So we'll add a method which will give us the value if it is already there or not. Existing link, existing URL. So we'll create a method for this one later. So for now, let's just add the reference, existing link URL. Now let's just check this dot dialog dot class list dot add is open. This dot input dot value equals to existing URL. If it is existing URL, we add it, otherwise empty string. Then this dot input dot focus, we make the input focus where user can directly type. Then this dot input dot select, and then this dot is open equals to true. So this is our open method. Now let's create this existing URL method. So we'll create it here, get existing URL. So const selection, we'll get it from window.getSelection. So window.getSelection. Then we'll check if selection dot range count is not there, we will return null. Next, let's create the node. We need to get the value, so let's create a node from the selection dot get range at, we get the start container, then we'll check where is the link. So if we are inside a link, we need to find the node itself, so we can read the property. So we'll say while node is there and node dot node type not equals to node dot document node. I will check if node dot node name equals to a, the anchor tag, then we'll just read the value, return node dot get attribute, and we'll get the href attribute. Else we'll change the node value, node equals to node dot parent node, else we'll return null, there is no value. Now let's create the close and the submit method. So let's create the close, this dot dialog dot class list dot remove is open, and this dot is open flag, we set it to false. And for the submit, let's get the input value, so const value equals to this dot input dot value dot trim, if there is any white space in front or back we remove it, and if there is no URL, or this is not a value, this is a URL we are reading, so if there is no URL we will return, else this dot dialog, not the dialog, we need to restore and apply the link, so we'll say this dot editor dot restore selection, we will restore the selection, and then this dot editor dot link, we'll call that method that we added in our formatter link, and we'll pass the URL and it will add the link in our text editor, then we'll close it. Okay, so this file we have our link dialog. Okay, now let's use this link dialog file in our main file, which is our editor. So let's go to the editor, we'll import it first here, import link dialog. Now let's open the render method. So before that we need to add the link dialog here, so we'll add link dialog, a variable we need first. Now let's go to the render method. After the toolbar we'll add this dot link dialog equals to new link dialog, and we will pass the this, which is our editor. Now let's add some public methods so we can use them, link, unlink, and open link dialog. So at the end let's add these new methods, so link URL, so this dot formatter dot link, we'll add the URL. Now we are adding it here because we are accessing these values inside our link dialog. You see in here we are calling the link, it comes from the this dot dialog. Okay, this should be from the editor. Yep, this should be from the editor because it does not exist on our dialog. Dialog does not handle the link, our editor handles the link. So let's just go back to our editor file. We added this link from the formatter, so we can access it inside our link dialog file. Next is unlink. So this dot formatter dot unlink, the last is open dialog, link dialog, and it will call this dot link dialog dot open. This open method is this one, so it will open this method when we use this method. Now for the toolbar, we need to add that link in here, so open the toolbar, and we need to add two things in here. One is the separator and second is the toolbar itself. So if I save it here, now let's open this one in our browser. Okay, you see we have it here. Now it is by default open. Let's see why is that. Okay, this is by default open. Let's inspect this. We have the overlay. Okay, we don't have the main class. If we check our link dialog, we have the class here. Okay, it should be the class name. So we just save it. And let's see the link dialog. Okay, so class name should be black and white link dialog. Now if we save it, see now it is gone. Let's just add some text to add link. Let's select this one, we click here. Okay, nothing is happening. Let's see what is the issue here. Okay, so the problem is that the action should be a name, not the method. So we'll change it to the name. So let's save it. Now let's add some text. We select this, click on open link. Okay. Okay, so let's fix this one. So inside our toolbar, we have the this add event listener, which called the execute action method. Now we are only reading the name. Now it could be the name or the action, because for the link we are calling the action on the action name. So in here we'll just add the action here. So let's go to the click event handler. In here let's just add a new line. We'll call it const action name config dot action or config dot name. Then we'll pass the action name to this one, the execute action. Let's save it. Now if we refresh the page, let's add the link. And if we click here, let's add a link. Insert. See, it's there. If I select it, click again, it is there. If I just change it, update, it's there. Click again. See, now our link dialog is also working. So this was a big session for adding the link dialog, adding the this dialog input and the buttons, and handling the click event, adding the link. Now this is our editor with all these functionalities. We have the keyboard shortcuts, block handling, links. In next episode we will wrap up that what we have built, and we talked about where we go from here. Great work. It was a great journey till now. I see you in final episode. So finally we are in our last episode. So let's just open the episode 12 and open the JS file. This is our complete file, and I just took a liberty and added few methods in here. So you can see I have added these public methods to get the HTML, set HTML, or destroy our WYSIWYG editor. So we are just reading the content inner HTML, or we are setting the inner HTML using these methods, and we are removing the all the wrapper, the content, and the dialog when we call the destroy method. So this is our complete toolbar. Let's just open in our browser. So finally we have finished our editor course, and now you understand how the editor works under the hood, how you can create the link and add the inline options or the block level options, how to handle the keyboard shortcuts, or how you can handle the enter key when you press on the keyboard for a different browser, how to add the link. Now this is a working editor. It was a great course, and I will see you in next course.